Welcome to the Freak Show, fellow freaks.
I'm Matthew Brockmeyer.
And I'm Christa Carmen.
And you know that this is...
Murder Coaster.
Crime and punishment. One of civilization's most debated issues. A place where philosophy, religion, and politics often merge. Today's subject, axe murderer Karla Faye Tucker, became a lightning rod of debate in the 1990s, sparking fiery discussions and disputes with everyone from the Pope to Larry King over capital punishment, the true nature of redemption and forgiveness. Karla has been called the personification of evil, and conversely, living evidence of God's love and a faithful servant of Jesus. Which is true? Well, dear listeners, you tell us. And today's episode is a request from listener Robin Hoff. Thank you so much for listening, Robin. We hope you enjoy it.
Let's begin. Prologue. February 3rd, 1998, Texas State Penitentiary, Death Row. It was most likely the sexual elements to the murders that sealed Karla Faye Tucker's fate. How she'd bragged of having an orgasm with every swing of the pickaxe when she killed Jerry Dean and Deborah Thornton.
After her dramatic conversion to Christianity, everyone from the Pope to Pat Robertson and Jimmy Swaggart had been pressuring then Texas Governor George W. Bush to commute her sentence to life. Even Bush's own daughter pleaded with him to spare her. Thousands upon thousands of letters in support had been mailed.
It was a case that had attracted huge public interest, especially after her interviews on 60 Minutes and Larry King Live. If the execution were to be carried out, it would be the first time a woman was executed in Texas since the Civil War 135 years earlier.
But George Bush had been clear on his stance. Gender meant nothing to him. If a prisoner was guilty beyond a doubt and all their appeals had been exhausted, he would sign the death warrant. In fact, he had worked on streamlining the process to make it easier. He may have been a born-again Christian, but he was a Republican, and this was Texas after all. They'd executed 45 people the previous year, more than all other states combined.
And there were those who claimed Karla's jailhouse conversion to Christianity was a hoax, that she was exploiting her religion to manipulate the system into sparing her life. Folks like Deborah Thornton's husband, Richard, who'd requested to watch her die, and said there would be no uproar over the case if she wasn't a young, white, and pretty woman.
And the crimes were particularly brutal. Jerry Dean had been struck 30 times with a pickaxe, the back of his head caved in with a hammer, and the axe had been left embedded 7 inches into Deborah Thornton's chest.
But what most attracted the media's attention was the sexual pleasure Karla had bragged of receiving during the killings. In her own words, "I got a nut with every swing of the axe."
Women who kill for sexual pleasure or orgasm during murder are a particularly rare breed. Charlie Manson follower Susan Atkins, aka Sexy Sadie, claimed killing was highly sexual, the knife phallic, and that she went into an orgiastic frenzy killing Sharon Tate, so highly stimulated that she licked the blood from the knife.
Recently, Taylor Shabiznes killed her boyfriend, Shad Therian, in a meth-fueled sexual frenzy, mutilating and dismembering him while having sex with his corpse.
While relatively common for male serial killers, this is very rare in females, who mostly kill for financial gain and use non-violent forms of death, such as poisoning. Bragging of orgasming during the murders brought Karla Tucker square into the territory of a monster and full-on psychopath.
But many claimed she'd been redeemed by accepting Christ into her heart as her personal savior and should be spared. Others said it was unseemly to execute a woman in general, that women should be exempt from the death penalty. Others said the death penalty itself was a form of cruel and unusual punishment, with a finality that can never be reversed, and she was a perfect example of why the death penalty should be abolished.
So, was her conversion to Christianity real? Or did she just proclaim her salvation in order to manipulate public opinion? Should women be spared the death penalty? Or should justice be served equally? Is execution a barbaric form of cruel and unusual punishment or a legitimate deterrent to violent crime? Well, we don't have the answers to questions like these. We're just storytellers.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Karla Faye Tucker.
Chapter 1. Little Karla.
Karla Faye Tucker was born in Houston, Texas on November 18, 1959, the youngest of three girls, Kathy, Kari, and Karla.
Her father, Larry, was a longshoreman on the Houston Ship Channel who had worked hard and brought home good pay. And they were doing well in Karla's early years. They had a dog named Ladybug and a house on a lake with a boat about an hour from Houston.
But Karla's mother, Carolyn, had a wild streak that came ripping out in the swinging 60s. She started experimenting with drugs and sleeping around.
Drugs and free love. The 60s were groovy like that. Carolyn loved to party and party hard. When Karla was 8 years old, her mother showed her how to roll the perfect joint.
Karla was a tough little girl, saying she was going to be the first female professional football player. She smoked cigarettes with her sisters, wasn't afraid to talk shit or get into a fight. By 1969, when she was only 10 years old, Karla's mother was instructing her how to shoot up heroin.
Karla, again only 10 years old, was fascinated by needles and enjoyed the whole process of shooting dope, tying off and finding a plump vein, piercing her skin with the syringe and watching the blood bloom up into the chamber. The process itself almost as pleasurable as the rush of the dope hitting her bloodstream.
This was obviously not a healthy household, very, very troubled, and soon Karla's parents divorced.
And it was during the divorce proceedings that Karla discovered that the man she thought was her father was not her father at all. She was the product of an affair.
She'd always felt different, and she looked different than her sisters as well. Darker, skinnier, more wiry. But Larry was a good man who accepted his responsibilities and considered Karla his daughter, whether they were blood related or not. And when her parents separated, Karla stayed with Larry while her sisters moved in with their mother, Carolyn.
But Karla, like her mother, was just an out-of-control wild child. She lost her virginity at 11 to a grown man. And by the time she was 12, she was having sex with the neighborhood boys, dropping acid, drinking, and shooting up speed and heroin.
She failed the 7th grade twice before getting expelled and was mean as a hornet, stubborn as a mule and ornery as a raccoon, ready to fight anyone who crossed her path or told her what to do.
Not knowing what to do with his deeply troubled and out of control daughter, Larry sent Karla to live with her mother.
At this point, Carolyn had become a rock and roll groupie, traveling around the country, having sex with rock stars, sometimes for money, sometimes just for kicks, traveling with the Allman Brothers, Dr. Hook, the Eagles, and the Marshall Tucker Band.
So Karla joined her mother on the road and absolutely loved it. Her mother taught her the ropes, how to prostitute herself when she needed money, how to approach the bouncers and give them sexual favors for backstage passes to meet the bands.
So Karla and her best friend Sean became groupies and roamed across the country with bands for weeks at a time, having sex with roadies and band members, shooting up drugs. She was only 14 years old.
It's just fucking crazy, man. Karla's sisters were also working as prostitutes, and they'd send customers who liked younger girls to Karla and her friend Sean. Sex work was the family business, and hard drugs the recreation of choice. At 15, Karla had a hysterectomy, ensuring she'd never get pregnant.
It was a wild few years, but when she turned 16, she decided to settle down and get married to 19-year-old Stephen Griffin. Stephen described it to the Houston Chronicle like this.
I had a Harley Davidson, worked 6 months a year and made 20 grand, so I thought I was on top of the world. Me and a bunch of buddies pulled into a local park. We were hanging out and partying. Karla Faye and one of her friends were there smoking a fat, pink joint. So I hollered over and introduced myself. That's how we met. We got along fairly well. We fist fought a lot. I've never had men hit me as hard as she did. Whenever I went into a bar, I didn't have to worry because she had my back. She was tough. I saw things in her that no one else did. That girl had so much potential. She could talk to someone and make them feel at ease. She was charismatic. Even when she was on drugs and could hardly walk, she was beautiful. When she left me, I told my friend she was going to get killed or kill somebody.
Her mother, Carolyn's partying and heavy drug use had finally caught up with her, though. She had hepatitis, was frail, haggard, wrinkled, gray, and old, and she was only 43 years old when she passed away due to hepatitis complications.
Old and dead at 43, that's super sad. Instead of the death of her mother at a very young age being a lesson to get clean and live a more wholesome and healthier lifestyle, it had the exact opposite effect. After 6 years of marriage, Karla declared that she had to work out her wild streak, to sow her oats before it was too late. And at 20 years old, left her husband to go party, changing her name back to Tucker.
Karla's sisters, along with her best friend Sean, had turned sex work into a full-on business at that point. They had a special phone installed, Red, which was only used for prostitution purposes. Once a month, they went to a motel in Midland for a week to service the oil field workers there, making enough to survive on until the next month.
Karla took over the organization and ruled it like a gang leader.
They also dealt in drugs. They had a doctor who would give them prescriptions for cash, whatever they wanted. Quaaludes, Valium, Dilaudid, Percocet, which they'd then sell.
And it was in the waiting room of this pill mill doctor that Karla met Danny Garrett.
Chapter 2. Danny.
Danny Garrett was a bartender by trade, 13 years older than Karla. He was 37, she was 23. Danny was a Vietnam veteran, tough as old leather. He had a Harley Davidson, was a biker, and loved to party, all of which Karla found irresistible. They were an instant couple.
They rented a house at 2205 McKean next to a sand pit filled with water, where Karla would go swimming. And they got a pair of pit bulls named Tessa and Tudor.
By all accounts, tough, mean-eyed Danny loved Karla with all his heart. In a way, they were soulmates, wild as a tornado. He didn't mind that she worked as a prostitute. Business was business, after all.
And business was wild as hell. Harley Davidsons, black leather, and hard drugs. Karla's sister, Kari, had married this guy, Ronnie Burrell. He and his friend, Jimmy LeBrant, were bathtub chemists, churning out what was said to be some very high-quality crystal methamphetamine.
Karla's best friend since childhood, Sean, who she'd been a groupie with, married a biker named Jerry Lynn Dean, a 27-year-old cable installer. He was a small guy, 5'7", and only 142 pounds. But he was wiry strong, mean as a rattlesnake.
Karla had never liked Jerry. She'd met him when she was returning home after a 2-week stint of sex work. She wanted nothing more than to curl up in bed and get some rest. But there was this asshole biker sleeping in her bed, who'd parked his Harley right in her living room, the motorcycle leaking oil all over her carpet. She was livid.
Relationships didn't last long in this drug-fueled insanity. Kari and Ronnie broke up, though he and Jimmy stayed close with the group. Sean and Jerry also separated, but their relationship became very bitter.
Jerry could be cruel. He'd beaten Sean, broken her nose, and busted her lip, and he'd taken a photo album of Karla's and destroyed it. In particular, a treasured photograph of Karla and her mother, poking holes in Karla's mother's face. Karla more than loved her mother. She'd idolized her, and defaming this precious photograph enraged her. She vowed vengeance on Jerry.
And Jerry? Well, Jerry said he didn't want to kill Karla, and wouldn't, but he claimed he would enjoy taking a flare gun to her pretty face and disfiguring her for the rest of her life.
Chapter 3. The Murders.
What had started as a backyard barbecue had turned into a 3-day, full-on, wild as can be, biker party bender.
The party had started on June 10th, 1983, with beer and barbecued ribs. But of course they'd started in on some Jack Daniels, drinking it by the bucketful, and tequila and rum for good measure.
And of course you're going to need some good old crank. Homemade methamphetamine to keep the party going. And when they got too wired, they'd need to take the edge off with some Dilaudid, methadone, Soma, and Valium.
And while they're at it, might as well start shooting up some heroin with that speed.
Leonard Skinner was cranked to full blast. Ronnie Van Zant pleading, "Give me 3 steps, mister. 3 steps towards the door." Broken by the roar of Harley Davidsons. Pit bulls roaming the outskirts, growling. There was a shotgun behind the couch, and Danny kept a .38 pistol in his boot. And the main topic of conversation, those long 3 days in 1982, was Jerry Lynn Dean.
Karla was irate that Jerry had destroyed that picture of her mother, poking holes in her face, and broken her best friend's nose. Jerry Lindeen was no real man. He was a wuss, a piece of shit, a slimy little coward.
Hawk turned to the motorcycle Jerry was customizing in the living room of his apartment. Karla telling them that Jerry didn't deserve to own a Harley.
The hard-partying bikers all agreed. A Harley was a special thing, and Jerry, a man who beat on women and showed no respect, didn't deserve one.
So it was decided they'd break into Jerry's apartment and steal his Harley Davidson. As Karla would later say,
It was a bunch of big, bad dope talk. You sit around in circles like that and you talk about things that never really develop, never turn into anything but talk.
but it did turn into much more than just talk. It turned into murder, a double homicide.
Karla's boyfriend, Danny, a Vietnam vet and self-described expert on reconnaissance, sketched out a floor plan of Jerry's apartment, showing where he slept and where the Harley was being built.
And Karla's best friend, Sean, who was Jerry's estranged wife, had the keys to Jerry's apartment and car.
It was on. Karla exclaimed that she was going to, quote, off Jerry and steal his Harley Davidson.
Later, Karla would say they actually hadn't planned on killing him that night, or even stealing anything. Instead, they just wanted to survey the premises, do some reconnaissance, plan it out. As she herself said,
We were very wired and we was looking for something to do. The plan was just to case the joint out.
So on June 13th, 1983, 3 o'clock in the morning, Karla, her boyfriend Danny Garrett, and meth manufacturer Jimmy Liebrant climbed into Danny's 1977 blue Ranchero truck and drove out the 5 miles through the heat of the Texas night, through patches of drift roses and Mexican firebush, to Jerry's apartment.
Karla wore a dark t-shirt and jeans. Danny wore a black Harley-Davidson shirt and motorcycle boots and gloves, bringing along a flashlight as well as his shotgun.
But Karla swears they didn't go there with the intention of killing him, saying,
We never went anywhere without a weapon. Danny always carried his little .38 pistol in his boot. It would have been stupid to go there and walk around at 3 or 4 in the morning and not have some kind of protection. Besides, in our circle of friends, you were always prepared for unexpected occurrences.
When they got to the apartment complex, meth dealer Jimmy made the wise decision of staying outside, saying he'd scope out Jerry's El Camino, while Karla and Danny went inside.
Karla and Danny slunk up to apartment number 2313, which was conveniently located on the ground floor, and Karla quietly unlocked the door with the key her best friend Sean had given her. They crept inside, using a flashlight, finding the Harley Davidson, which was in pieces all over the living room floor.
Then a voice from the back bedroom called out, "What's going on?"
Instead of bolting, Karla and Danny decided to confront Jerry, pushing open his bedroom door.
His bedroom was a pigsty. Dirty laundry, boxes, tools, stepladders all lay about in a jumble.
Jerry himself lay naked on a dirty mattress, no bed frame, his long, stringy hair covering his shoulders, a mustache on his upper lip.
Karla immediately leapt upon him, pinning him down and saying,
"Don't move, motherfucker, or you're dead."
As Karla would later say,
My idea of getting even with him meant confronting him, standing toe to toe, fist to fist.
but Jerry panicked, pushed Karla off of him, and Danny grabbed a hammer from the floor, lifted it over his head, and cracked Jerry in the skull, blood spurting out and spraying the walls. Then Danny hit him again with the hammer, and again.
Jerry struggled to defend himself as the hammer blows came raining down on his head, but then fell down on the bed face first, knocked out cold.
Danny then bolted into the living room and began grabbing motorcycle parts, hauling them outside to his ranchero and throwing them in the bed of the truck.
But Karla remained in the room, listening to the gurgle escaping Jerry's mouth as his lungs began to fill with blood and fluid.
Danny had hit Jerry so hard with the hammer, it had unhinged his head from his neck, causing blood and mucus to fill his breathing passages. The horrible, raspy sound of the unconscious man struggling to breathe filled Karla with some bizarre rage. As she later said,
That sound. All I wanted to do was stop him from making that sound.
She turned on the light to see him better, then turned on the radio to a rock and roll station, cranking up the volume.
There in the corner of the room, Karla spied a pickaxe that Jerry used to dig ditches when laying cable. It was 4 feet long with a handle as thick as a baseball bat, an iron head 2 feet across, an axe blade on one side, and an adze on the other.
So Karla gripped the pickaxe handle in her hands, a strange sexual surge pouring over her as the methamphetamine and violence coalesced in her brain, and she swung the pickaxe, sinking it deep into his back.
The blade sunk between his ribs, and she had to put her foot on him and wiggle the axe loose and pry it out.
She then swung again and again, 5 times, each time, according to her, achieving an orgasm.
Just then, Jimmy came into the apartment, having found Jerry's El Camino and looking for the keys. He stepped into the bedroom to see Karla wrenching the axe free and raising it above her head.
She turned to him, a sparkle in her eyes, smiled, and brought the axe down again.
Jimmy, a hardened biker and drug dealer, decided he'd seen too much at this point and bolted, jumping into Danny's truck and peeling out, as Karla would later describe it. He tucked tail and ran.
Then Danny came into the bedroom, and seeing that Jerry was still somehow alive through all of this, still gurgling and twitching, he rolled him over and slammed the pickaxe into his chest, striking his heart, killing him, and stopping the horrible gurgling.
As Danny headed out into the living room to grab more motorcycle parts, Karla noticed something. There appeared to be a figure against the wall, hiding under the bedsheets. Another person in the room.
It was Deborah Thornton, a 32-year-old bookkeeper from a mortgage company who, after having had a huge fight with her husband, had drunkenly decided to take revenge on him by hooking up with the scruffy biker at a pool party.
Deborah was not acquainted with Karla or Danny at all, had just randomly ended up in the apartment after making a very bad decision.
Karla eyed her there beneath the sheets, trying to hide and be still. Karla took the pickaxe, crept up, and swung it, striking the woman in the shoulder.
Deborah, howling in pain, leapt up, fighting, clawing, scratching, struggling to get the pickaxe from Karla.
Danny, hearing the struggle, ran in and managed to pry the axe from the struggling women, striking Deborah with it. Deborah cried out,
"Oh God, it hurts! If you're going to kill me, please just do it!"
So Danny kicked her in the chin with his motorcycle boots, then buried the pickaxe into her chest, leaving it there, the handle sticking upright.
Danny and Karla then proceeded to steal anything of value they could get their hands on, loading it into Jerry's El Camino and taking off just as the first rays of morning light were breaking the darkness of the night sky.
Chapter 4, Post-Mortem.
In the morning, a workmate of Jerry's showed up to get a ride and discovered the massacre.
The images of the blood-streaked walls, Jerry naked on the bare mattress, covered in gore, his long, stringy hair across his face, and the innocent woman Deborah Thornton laying there with an axe protruding up from her chest would haunt him the rest of his life and fill his sleep with nightmares.
Waiting for the knock to knock me out. Waiting for the knock to knock me out. Waiting for the knock. Coco, arrest me. Waiting for the knock to knock me out. Waiting for the knock to knock me out. Waiting for the knock. Coco, arrest me. Catch a freight train rolling for free. This mojo will never come clean. On the fence or begging on my knees. I'll never know the truth behind why you arrested me.
Danny and Karla panicked, the gravity of the situation evidently hitting them with the Texas sunrise.
They ditched Jerry's El Camino in a parking lot near the Astrodome and burned the title papers. The motorcycle parts they'd so coveted and taken the time to steal, they then just threw into the Brazos River.
Then they calmed themselves, and thinking that they'd escaped the law and hidden their tracks, they then just went back home and commenced with partying again.
As Karla would later say,
I was so spaced out on drugs that it didn't seem real to me. I not only didn't walk around with any guilt, I was proud of thinking that I had finally measured up to the big boys.
when the news came on the television and the story of the murderers flashed across the screen, Karla and Danny just laughed and laughed and laughed. Karla bragging about how sexually stimulating murder was, how swinging the axe into Jerry's back and seeing all that blood had brought her to an orgasm.
For the next 5 weeks, from June 13th, 1983 to July 20th, they partied and bragged about the killings to their friends.
Meanwhile, investigators had compiled a list of folks who had a beef with Jerry, and Karla and Danny were both on that list. But it was a very, very long list. Jerry had a lot of enemies.
Then a break in the case came from, of all people, Danny and Karla's own respective siblings.
Danny's brother, Doug Garrett, and Karla's sister, Kari, were scared and worried on two fronts. First, they were worried they'd be eventually charged as accessories since they knew everything, both before and after the murders. And two, they were also scared that Danny and Karla might kill them as well to keep them from talking.
So Doug and Kari moved out of the party house and went into hiding, one always staying awake with a loaded shotgun in easy reach.
Eventually, they grew so paranoid that they called Houston Police Homicide Detective J.C. Mosier and just told him everything.
Detectives needed some kind of proof, so they had Doug wear a wire and go talk with Karla and Danny while they listened in a van parked outside.
Sipping a beer, Doug tried to act casual, asking Karla if she'd planned to kill Jerry that night or if it had just been a spur-of-the-moment thing.
Nah, Karla said. They just freaked and done it spontaneously.
Doug asked, well, why'd you use a pickaxe? Karla stating simply,
because it was there.
And then Doug asked Karla if it was really true that she'd orgasmed every time she swung the axe, to which she replied,
well, hell yes.
Doug then left the house, hopped on his motorcycle, and tore off. And soon law enforcement was closing in, pulling Danny over in his truck and arresting him, busting into the house as Karla, wearing snakeskin cowboy boots, was dipping a fish stick into ketchup. I have to ask, who eats fish sticks with ketchup? Is that a thing?
It's a toddler thing. Toddlers totally eat fish sticks with ketchup.
Toddlers will eat dirt with ketchup.
Fair enough. Yeah, I would not eat a fish stick. Let's just leave it at that.
Oh, I'll eat a fish stick.
I guess I'm a spoiled rotten Rhode Island bitch with my fresh seafood.
Oh, last night I had some fresh salmon. It was tasty.
Ooh,
good.
that sounds good. Anyhow, when the police burst in, everyone in the house scattered, some naked biker actually leaping right through the window.
The cops knocked Karla's plate of fish sticks out of her hands, splattering the wall with ketchup and bits of fish, slapped on the handcuffs, and arrested her for murder.
The party was over, but Karla, evidently still high out of her mind, was friendly and chatty, talking pleasantly with the officers as they drove her to the station to be booked, as if she didn't have a care in the world.
Chapter 5. The Trial.
Karla was charged with the murder of Jerry Lynn Dean and Danny Garrett for the murder of Deborah Thornton. Prosecutors thinking they'd have a stronger case if they paired each defendant with only one victim.
Karla went to trial first on April 11th, 1984.
The prosecutor would later say,
I remember when she first came into court. Her attitude and the way she looked and everything about her was the personification of evil. You didn't even want to turn your back on her. It was just kind of an invisible cloud surrounding her. She looked bad.
Karla pled innocent to capital murder, saying it wasn't premeditated, hoping the charge would get reduced to manslaughter.
Prosecutors harbored over the graphic images, repeatedly using the term hacked to death. Having Jimmy take the stand and testify how he'd watched Karla wrench the pickaxe free from Jerry's back and smile at him before plunging it in again.
Police had videotaped the gruesome crime scene, but that evidence was never shown. Instead, they allowed the jury to imagine it all.
Karla's lawyers claimed Jerry had been killed by the hammer blows received from Danny, but the medical examiner took the stand and said no, he died from the pickaxe.
And Karla's own sister Kari took the stand and told how Karla had bragged she'd orgasmed, or got a nut with every swing.
Karla never took the stand, just sat there impassive, mean-eyed, surly, cold, and remorseless.
It only took the jury an hour to find her guilty, saying she, quote, intentionally caused the death of the complainant? Yeah. Intentionally caused the death of the complainant by striking and stabbing the complainant with a mattock.
How can he be the complainant if he's dead? He's not complaining.
Yeah, that's a weird way to put it.
Chapter 6. Born again in the blood of the Lamb.
Then in October 1983, while waiting for the sentencing phase of her trial to commence, Karla found Jesus.
Antelope gallops across the grand savannah, accompanied by a minor tune on the piano. For there's a lion in the brush, awaiting for the kill, and even in the warm sun there is found a child.
Very convenient, if you ask me. Like, oh, there he is! Right before my sentencing and my death penalty trial. So glad I found him there.
As Karla would describe it, quote, a ministry came to the jail to do a service, a puppet show, one night, and everybody in my tank was going out to the puppet show. I didn't want to stay alone in my tank, so I decided to go with them and socialize in church.
There at the Christian puppet show, which really must have been something, she stole a Bible, not realizing they were actually giving them out for free. Yet she'd find Jesus through a Bible that she stole.
Not wanting to be seen as weak for reading the Bible, she'd hide in the corner of her cell and read the thin paper pages, flipping through Psalms, Revelation, Genesis, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
According to her, as she read that stolen Bible there in the corner of her cell, a strange feeling began to overwhelm her. Her heart began to open, and one night, she found herself on her knees, praying for forgiveness. As she says,
at the time, I didn't understand how the Holy Spirit works. I just remember the whole weight of everything I had done suddenly became a reality. 2 precious lives were gone because of me. I didn't know what I was reading. Before I knew it, I was in the middle of my cell floor on my knees asking God to forgive me. God reached down inside of me and just literally uprooted all that evil stuff and took it out and poured himself in. It's called the joy of the Lord. I know what real love is. I know what forgiveness is. Even when I did something so horrible, I know that because God forgave me and I accepted what Jesus did on the cross.
So Karla showed up for the sentencing phase of her trial, born again, now wearing a white plastic cross around her neck, a changed woman. And this time she took the stand, recounting her horrible childhood and sad life, the whole sordid tale, shooting heroin at 10, losing her virginity at 11, becoming a prostitute at 14.
She also claimed it hadn't been her that killed Jerry Dean at all, but her boyfriend Danny, which to me appears that she's not taking responsibility for her crimes.
She also said that all that talk about sexual ecstasy and orgasm, well, she just made it up to try and look tough, telling the jury,
I've hurt a lot of people, and I wish I could take the hurt out of everybody and put it on myself.
But the jury did not believe a word of it, and after just 3 hours, sentenced her to death by lethal injection.
Karla's boyfriend Danny then went to trial and he too was sentenced to death.
In December, Karla was transferred to the Mountain View unit of the Texas Department of Corrections in Gatesville and put on death row, prisoner number 777. And for a long while, she was the only woman there on death row.
Karla took high school correspondence classes and got her GED, then began taking college classes as well. She taught herself sign language so that, quote, I could take these two hands that used to hurt and let them help.
She wrote anti-drug letters to teens and spent her days sewing dolls that she called parole pals. I'd love to have one of them dolls. I'll tell you what, that'd be so crazy.
Have you seen pictures of them?
No.
Maybe
I should look deeper. We'll try to find some pictures and show them.
Cool. Over time, other women joined her on death row. Pamela Perillo, who'd killed 2 hitchhikers. Betty Lou Beats, who'd killed her 5th husband and buried him under a wishing well. And Frances Newton, who killed her husband and 2 children for an insurance payoff.
At 6:30 every morning, their cells were unlocked and they were free to mill about, crocheting and reading the Bible. The women on death row celebrated each other's birthdays and holidays, giving each other handmade gifts and playing games like pin the tail on the donkey. They cut each other's hair and rallied around when one would get depressed. They became a little family.
Karla would say, I'm not going to say that being in prison makes me happy, but what I'm doing for myself makes me feel good inside. I'm moving ahead.
Karla led Bible studies, decorated the day room with crocheted handiwork, maintained a perfect disciplinary record, and as a word of her dedication to the Word of God and acceptance of Jesus as her personal Savior spread, the public attitude towards her began to shift. Even the prosecutor saying,
I think she is different now. And if there was some way to sentence to death the person who hacked those people and take the present Karla Faye Tucker and sentence her to something else, I would be happy with that. But even though she is different, the person who hacked those people to death is Karla Faye Tucker. If she is executed, I'll be a little sad for society. We allowed Karla to get into the predicament that she was in. She was a child when she started going down the path. Somebody should have noticed.
And then televangelist Pat Robertson took an interest in her case. As he says,
we sent a reporter down to talk to her, and we didn't find some wild-eyed hippie. We found the most beautiful Christian woman we have ever encountered. Sublime. A lovely spirit.
Sublime. Fucking A, man. So Pat Robertson put her on his conservative Christian television show, The 700 Club, garnering a lot of attention and saying,
if Bush lets this sweet woman of God die, he's a man who shows no mercy.
And other television evangelists joined her cause as well. Jerry Falwell said on his show, The Old Time Gospel Hour, I just knew instantly that girl had been touched by the Lord and ought to be spared.
The Houston Chronicle put a picture of her on the front page, looking beautiful and youthful, bright-eyed and innocent. But not everyone was convinced. One reader of the Chronicle wrote in saying,
the first thing a criminal learns when they are put on death row is to become a born-again Christian. Life is cheap with these people, until, of course, theirs is at stake. Then they will use any and every trick in the book to beat the punishment. I say give this lady the needle. If she is truly a convert to Jesus, he will see that she has everlasting life.
In 1993, Danny died of cirrhosis of the liver on death row at the young age of 47.
In 1995, Karla and the other ladies on death row in Texas received a new prisoner, Kathy Lynn Henderson, who had abducted and murdered a 3-month-old baby. Accepting her into their strange little family of murderers who'd been bathed clean in the blood of the Lamb.
Chapter 7. Love and Marriage on Death Row.
I used to look upon myself as rational and strong, and love was just a word in silly songs. But from that cursed day when you crossed my way, all my confidence was gone. I'm bewitched, bewildered, and utterly alone. And something's telling me it always will be you until the end of my days. And in my dreams I see how I finally...
And then Karla was in love. Yay!
The lucky fellow was Reverend Dana Brown, a prison chaplain, and he asked her to marry him.
And she said yes! Yay!
The whole thing is so bizarre. She couldn't attend any ceremony, but undaunted, the Reverend held a marriage ritual and just had a proxy bride fill in, while at the same time Karla read the Bible and held a little marriage ritual on death row.
Even Karla knew how ridiculous it all sounded, saying,
It sounds silly, but it was beautiful.
Death row prisoners in Texas are forbidden any physical contact. So Karla and her husband never kissed, never hugged, never touched, or consummated their union in any way.
When asked why he'd married her, the Reverend said,
I was drawn to the spirit inside of her, the spirit of Christ.
And Karla said, Since we didn't let the physical relationship get in the way, we have a totally spiritual relationship that's so deep a lot of people wouldn't understand.
In an ultimate irony, getting married made it so that they actually saw less of each other. Ministers are allowed a lot more access to inmates than spouses. So, once they became husband and wife, the time they were allowed to spend together was dramatically shortened. Which makes me wonder, was Karla as head over heels in love as she claimed? Or was it all just a media stunt in order to more humanize her, make her look less monstrous? But who knows?
Chapter 8. Death Don't Have No Mercy.
In 1997, the Supreme Court rejected Karla's final appeal, clearing the way for her execution. And on December 18th, 13 years after her original trial, a date of February 3rd, 1998, was set for her death by lethal injection.
Now her fate rested solely on Texas Governor George W. Bush. If he received a recommendation from the Board of Pardons and Paroles, he could commute the death sentence to life in prison. So a massive campaign went underway to convince Bush to commune her sentence.
Evangelical Christians and anti-death penalty advocates from around the world sent letters pleading with Bush to commute her sentence. The Pope himself even writing him. Even conservative Republican stalwart Newt Gingrich saying she should be spared.
The media got involved. She appeared on 60 Minutes, where an argument was presented that her gender and conversion to Christianity made her case unique and worthy of clemency. Karla saying, That other Karla no longer exists. I'm so far removed from the person that was out there.
She was on the Larry King show, Larry interviewing her from behind a security grill at the prison. When Larry asked her to recount her crimes, she shied away, only saying,
I was very excited about doing different, crazy, violent things.
When Larry asked her about facing death, she replied,
I deserve a big punishment, but I don't believe I deserve capital punishment. Like I don't believe in abortion or euthanasia. I'm a different person now. I've made a positive change in my life, and I would love to be able to live on. What I firmly believe is if God is going to allow this to happen, He has a purpose for it. If He has a purpose for my life to continue on, He'll change the hearts of the governor and the parole board. He will help them to see what can be done through a commutation.
As the date grew closer and the debate over whether it was right to execute a woman became fiercer, Janice Sager, founder of Texans for Equal Justice, made a statement saying,
For years, women's groups have been screaming equal rights. So if you do the crime, you deserve equal punishment. She should be accountable. Doesn't matter if she's a woman. Her victims won't get a second chance.
It had been over 130 years since a woman had been executed in Texas, the last being Chipita Rodriguez, who was also accused of being an axe murderer, though her actual guilt is often questioned.
Chipita ran a small inn, and when the corpse of a man who'd stayed there named John Savage was found in a burlap sack floating downriver, his head split open. Chipita was blamed, despite the fact that she was a woman in her 60s.
Almost all court records have been destroyed, but the trial was rumored to be a farce.
The jury actually recommended she be spared death, but the judge overrode them, and on November 13, 1863, she was wheeled out to an old mesquite tree, sat upon a horse, and a noose looped around her neck. Her last words, "No soy culpable," I didn't do it, before the horse was led away and she swung by her neck.
She was buried in an unmarked grave that has not been found to this day, and bystanders claim she was still alive and moaning when the casket was lowered into the earth.
100 years later, Texas Senator Carlos Truen claimed the trial had been unfair and appealed, and had her absolved of the charges post-mortem. Big fucking help that is. Governor Mark White signing the paperwork which cleared her name on June 13th, 1985.
Despite being absolved, her ghost is said to still haunt the San Patricio area, roaming the river bottoms. And whenever a woman is sentenced to death in Texas, she is said to appear as a specter with a noose around her neck and let out a chilling moan. How cool is that?
That's a good ghost story for sure. As her execution grew closer, Karla found support in unlikely places, like the brother of Deborah Thornton, who said,
When I found out who killed my sister, I wanted to kill her. I wanted bloodlust and vengeance. I wanted to take that pickaxe and axe her to death and leave it in her heart like she left it in my sister's heart. But Jesus has touched me the same way it has touched Karla. And what I see in Miss Tucker today is Jesus. I want Karla Tucker to have a chance to continue to serve the Lord. As a wave of support buoyed her, Karla wrote to Governor Bush herself, saying, in parts,
I am in no way attempting to minimize the brutality of my crime. It obviously was very, very horrible, and I do take full responsibility for what happened. If my execution is the only thing, the final act that can fulfill the demand for restitution and justice, then I accept that. It was in October, 3 months after I'd been locked up, when a ministry came to the jail and I went to the service, that night accepting Jesus into my heart. When I did this, the full and overwhelming weight and reality of what I had done hit me. On this day, tears are a part of my life. I am seeking you to commute my sentence and allow me to pay society back by helping others. I can't bring back the lives I took, but I can, if I am allowed, help save lives. That is the only real restitution I can give.
But while she found a lot of support, some still condemned her, like Deborah Thornton's husband, who said, "The only reason this is even an issue is that Texas is known for protecting mom and apple pie. And here comes Karla Faye Tucker, who's pleasant to look at, who can fit the mold of the pure Texas gal. Well, let's not forget that this same Miss Prim and Proper was swimming a pickaxe 14 years ago. These people had no reason to harm her. She could have been told to get out. They chose to kill her, and they took away a wife, a mother, a lover, a friend, somebody I didn't want to be without. People need to understand that Karla Faye Tucker murdered 2 people in cold blood. She is and was a horrible person. She's been found guilty. She was sentenced to death. She needs to die."
George Bush then gave a statement.
"I feel my job is to uphold the laws of the state of Texas. We should treat this case like any other case. Was the law broken? Was this person afforded all the resources of the courts of law? Gender does not matter to me. What matters to me is life in general. The busyness of death penalty is emotional, and I can understand why people are all very emotional about this, particularly given the amount of publicity in this case. But my job is to administer the law fairly and justly."
Tell me, baby, what's the name?
200 people gathered on the steps of the Capitol to rally support for Karla's cause. And as the date grew closer with no seeming clemency, camera crews, international news teams, Amnesty International representatives, and victims' rights advocates all converged to chronicle the event.
On Monday, February 2nd, 1998, Karla was flown from the prison in Gatesville to Huntsville, where Texas conducts their executions.
I used to beg like a sinner, looking for someone to blame. I could be happy, I know, if I could play a different game. Out for you and me, watching it crumble so helplessly. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why. Just hold on tight.
On Tuesday, February 3rd, George Bush received 3,000 phone calls asking for Karla's death sentence to be commuted, as well as 2,369 letters, including from Pat Robertson and Pope John Paul II.
A local music store ran an ad reading, "Karla Faye Tucker sale, killer prices, deals to die for."
Karla met with her husband, Reverend Dana Brown, crying as she said a prayer with him. Then she was led away. They were not allowed to touch or have a goodbye kiss.
Outside, 1,200 people gathered with 200 reporters from around the world, a mix of pro and anti-death proponents, some with signs reading, "Axe, and you shall receive. Forget injection, use a pickaxe. And you pick death, die like a man."
Others held more sympathetic signs reading, "Jesus was a victim of the death penalty."
Death penalty proponents chanted, "She sliced, she diced, and now she's got to pay the price."
Beside them, evangelical Christians mournfully sang Amazing Grace, all while a man dressed as the Grim Reaper circulated through the crowd, with a woman dressed as a witch. And in true surrealist fashion, pizza delivery men began pulling up to deliver pizza pies to the hungry crowd.
Inside her cell, Karla prayed, telling guards he was right with the Lord. At 4 p.m., she received her final meal: peaches, a banana, and a tossed salad with ranch dressing. She was offered a sedative, but declined.
Then at 6:20, Governor Bush appeared on television to make an announcement.
When I was sworn in as the governor of Texas, I took an oath to uphold the laws of our state, including the death penalty. Many people have contacted my office about this execution. I respect the strong convictions which have prompted some to call for mercy. I have sought guidance through prayer. I have concluded judgments about the heart and soul of an individual on death row are best left to a higher authority. The courts have reviewed the legal issues, and therefore I will not grant a stay. May God bless Karla Faye Tucker, and may God bless her victims and their families.
At 6 p.m., Karla was escorted from her holding cell to the death house, a small room with blue-green cinder block walls with large windows into an observation room.
Karla looked at her executioner and thanked him. He told her she was welcome, later saying, "Well, what else am I going to say?"
The warden then removed his eyeglasses, which was the signal to begin the process.
She was strapped to a gurney, her arms, feet, legs, chest, and waist restrained with leather belts, her arms spread wide as if in crucifixion.
Karla worried that they wouldn't be able to find a vein after her years of intravenous drug use, but they found some veins and slid needles into her arms hooked up to IVs.
The warden then asked if she had a final statement. Strapped there to the gurney with tubes in her arms, she stated,
"I would like to say to the Thornton family and Jerry Dean's family that I am so sorry. I hope God will give you peace with this. Everybody has been so good. I love all of you very much. I am going to be face to face with Jesus now. I will see you all when you get there. I will wait for you."
A button was pushed and saline flushed through her veins. As Karla began to mouth a prayer, sodium thiopental rushed through her system. She gasped, coughed twice, and fell unconscious.
Pancuronium bromide was pumped through her veins, triggering complete paralysis of all muscles, including her diaphragm, preventing her from being able to breathe.
And finally, potassium chloride was administered, which stopped her heart, and a monitor alerted the attending physician that she was dead. All had gone perfectly to plan, and without a single hitch.
As author Mark Beaver said in his book, The Ballad of Karla Faye Tucker, which was one of our main sources for today's episode, quote,
If Jesus spoke Karla's name, nobody heard his voice. If heaven opened and spilled light onto Karla's face, none of the mortals gathered in the room saw its glow. If ministering angels bundled Karla to their breasts and escorted her to the place where God awaited his child, no one testified of their arrival. But then again, maybe all these things happened. That's the thing about the death penalty. You have to be the one lying on the gurney to know precisely what happens in that moment when you pass from life to death.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Karla Faye Tucker. Thank you so much for listening.
And do you have a story you'd like us to cover? Did we get something wrong? You got some music you want us to play? You just want to say hi? Anything at all? Reach out to us at murdercoasterpodcast@gmail.com. That's murdercoasterpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next week. Bye.
I've made this short list. Please have a glance. To sleep in all day and wake up in your arms with the sound of the rain on my window drumming away. I'm keeping it short and sweet. My bucket list. I'm not one for fairy tale dreams or technicolor Hollywood schemes. I'm more for living what must be given and given only by you. Some girls reach for the stars, fancy clothes and big shiny cars, but I'm quite content right here. Please read my short list, it's quite sincere. To just sleep in all day and wake up in